I can hear them. I can hear the kids inside. I think I heard one of them yell, but we can't get in. That was the panicked voice of a friend standing on a porch in the 1400 block of North 4th Street. It was just after 10 a.m. on Tuesday, December 30th, 2025. The air in the Weinland Park neighborhood of Columbus was biting, the kind of winter morning that makes your lungs ache. But for the man on that porch, the cold was the last thing on his mind. Inside that house, a beautiful, renovated home, 2 toddlers were crying for their parents. And their parents, a successful dentist and his devoted wife, were not answering. Welcome back to the community. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button and join our circle of truth seekers. We dive deep into the cases that the headlines often miss. And today, we are peeling back the layers of a story that feels like every suburban family's worst nightmare. Before we step through that door and see what those toddlers were witnessing, I want to know, where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city and the current time in the comments. I love seeing how far this community reaches. The story of the Tepe family didn't start with tragedy. It started with success. Dr. Spencer Tepe was 37 years old, a man who had built his life on precision and care. He was a pillar at Athens Dental Depot, a clinic located about 75 miles southeast of his home. Patients loved him. Colleagues respected him. He was the kind of guy who was never late. Punctuality wasn't just a habit for Spencer, it was a trademark. So, when 9 a.m. rolled around that Tuesday, and Spencer's chair was empty, the alarm bells didn't just ring, they screamed. Dr. Mark Valrose, the owner of the dental practice, was the first to feel that knot of dread in his stomach. He called 911 at 8:58 a.m. He told dispatchers that Spencer was always on time and would always call if there was an issue. This was uncharacteristic. This was wrong.
He's always on time, and this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
Columbus police responded for a welfare check at 9:22 a.m. An officer walked up those same steps on North 4th Street and knocked. He waited. He knocked again. Silence. From the outside, the house looked perfect. There were no broken windows, no kicked-in doors, no signs of a struggle. Without what the law calls exigent circumstances, like a visible body or a cry for help, that officer couldn't just kick the door down. He followed protocol. He checked the perimeter, found nothing out of the ordinary, and he left. But Spencer's friends and co-workers knew better. They didn't just go back to work. They drove to the house themselves. By 9:56 a.m., a small group had gathered on the sidewalk. That's when the silence of the house was finally broken. From the sidewalk, they could hear it, the unmistakable, heartbreaking sound of the couple's 4-year-old and 1-year-old crying. They weren't just fussing, they were in distress. One friend called 911 again, his voice shaking. He told the dispatcher he was ready to break the door down himself if he had to. He could hear one of the kids yelling. At 10:03 a.m., the nightmare became a reality. Alex Diddy, a close friend of Spencer, managed to get a look inside. Maybe he stood on his tiptoes or found an angle through a side window. What he saw stopped his heart. "There's a body," he told the dispatcher. His voice was thick with shock. "Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just came here and he appears dead."
The body, he's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, in his blood.
Spencer Tepe was lying on the floor next to his bed, surrounded by a pool of blood. He wasn't breathing. He was gone. Columbus Fire Department Medic 7 arrived minutes later. At 10:11 a.m., they officially pronounced both 37-year-old Spencer and his 39-year-old wife, Monique, deceased. Inside that house, the police didn't just find a crime scene. They found 2 tiny survivors who had been left alone with a horror no child should ever see. They also found the family's golden doodle, standing guard in a home that had been transformed from a sanctuary into a tomb. In the world of true crime, we often spend so much time looking at the bodies that we forget to look at the people. But to understand why the city of Columbus felt like the air had been sucked out of it that week, you have to understand who Spencer and Monique Tepe were. They weren't just names on a police report. They were the quintessential Ohio power couple. They were the ones who seemed to have it all figured out, living a life that was curated, successful, and deeply rooted in the Buckeye State. Spencer Tepe was 37 years old, and he was the definition of a high achiever. He grew up in Mason, Ohio, a well-to-do suburb just north of Cincinnati, where the lawns are manicured and the expectations are high. Spencer took those expectations and ran with them all the way to the Ohio State University. He earned a Bachelor of Science in Biology, but he also double-majored in Spanish. That wasn't just for a line on a resume. Spencer was passionate about communication. He wanted to reach people that other doctors couldn't. By 2017, he had his Doctor of Dental Surgery from the OSU College of Dentistry. But for a guy like Spencer, a degree was just the starting line. He poured hundreds of hours into continuing education, becoming a master of comprehensive dentistry. He had a specific, technical obsession with dental implant therapy. He was a guy who cared about the details, the kind of dentist who didn't just fix a tooth. He restored a smile. Before he landed at Athens Dental Depot, Spencer spent time in Ashland, working at Stone Creek Dental. He was building a reputation as a healer. But he wasn't just a suit and a white coat. Spencer was a die-hard sports fan. If the Cincinnati Bengals were playing, he was watching. If the Buckeyes were on the field, he was cheering. He was a man of the community, a mentor involved with big brothers, big sisters, and a friend who was known for being endlessly welcoming. What's the weather like where you are today? Is it a clear, crisp day, or is it gray and heavy like a winter morning in Ohio? Let me know in the comments. Then there was Monique, 39 years old and the perfect counterbalance to Spencer's high-precision world. She had a background in childhood education, and relatives say she brought that same care and intention into every corner of her life. She wasn't just a mother. She was a joyful mother. She was the thoughtful planner of the family, the one who kept the wheels turning. Monique was a baker. She was the one who filled their home with the smell of fresh bread and sweets, making sure that anyone who stepped through their door in the 1400 block of North 4th Street felt like they belonged there. Her brother, Rob Misla, said you never saw them without a smile on their faces. They were the people who always had the house everyone wanted to gather at. They were the ones hosting the parties, the ones making the memories. They got married in 2021. And here is the detail that really twists the knife. They exchanged their vows right there in that house. The same walls that saw them promise to love each other until death do us part would eventually witness the end of that promise. They were only 1 month away from celebrating their 5th wedding anniversary. The Tepes moved to Weinland Park in Columbus because they saw the potential. They bought an upscale, $700,000 home in a neighborhood that was caught between two worlds. On one side, you have the prestige of the Ohio State University and the trendy energy of the short north. On the other, you have the history of a neighborhood that has spent decades fighting its way out of the shadows of crime and disinvestment. To understand the tragedy on North 4th Street, you have to understand the ground it happened on. Weinland Park isn't just a collection of streets in Columbus. It's a living, breathing paradox. It is a neighborhood caught in the middle of a tug-of-war between a dark, violent history and a polished, professional future. For a couple like the Tepes, it was a place of opportunity. For someone else, it was still a hunting ground. The Tepes lived in the 1400 block of North 4th Street. Their home was a $700,000 statement of success. It was one of those houses that stands out beautifully renovated, with high-end finishes and a sense of permanence. But just a few decades ago, this exact stretch of road was part of what the Wall Street Journal once called a top 10% toughest street corner in America. Back in the 90s, Weinland Park wasn't a place for pediatric dentists and their golden doodles. It was the stronghold of the Short North posse. This wasn't just a neighborhood gang. They were a legend in the Columbus underworld. Their unofficial headquarters was Kelly's Carryout, located right there on North 4th Street. At the corner of 4th and 8th, just blocks from where the Tepes would eventually build their dream life, the air used to be thick with the business of the streets. It was a war zone where outsiders were met with immediate, often lethal, force. But then came the change. The city of Columbus, along with the Ohio State University, poured millions of dollars into Weinland Park. They wanted to flip the script. They cleared out the abandoned row houses and offered massive tax abatements to developers. They wanted professionals, people with degrees and clean records, to move back into the urban core. And it worked. By 2025, the neighborhood was a patchwork. On one block, you'd see a six-figure renovation with a Tesla in the driveway. On the next, you'd see the signs of a community still struggling with a 50% poverty rate. Spencer and Monique were the poster children for this new Weinland Park. They weren't afraid of the grit. They saw the proximity to the university and the Short North Arts District as a perk. They were part of a new wave of homeowners who believed that if you built a sanctuary inside your walls, the world outside didn't matter as much. If you're finding this deep dive into the Buckeye State about gentrification, hit that you like change button. The paint. It tells the algorithm that these stories deserve to be always told. Change the patterns. And it helps us keep the lights on. Residents who have lived in Weinland Park for 30 years will tell you that the silence of the night is often broken by more than just the wind. Even with the new investment, property crime and gunfire are still part of the local dialect. The Tepe's home was upscale, but it shared an alleyway with the rest of the neighborhood. And in those early morning hours of December 30th, that alleyway became a portal for something dark. Detectives from the Columbus Police Homicide Unit were faced with a puzzle that felt too precise to be random. They began to work backward from the moment the bodies were discovered at 10:04 a.m. By analyzing neighborhood security footage and forensic data, they narrowed the window of the crime down to a mere 3 hours. They believe the murders happened between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. on December 30th. Think about that time frame. In a busy city like Columbus, those 3 hours are when the streets are at their most deserted. The bars have closed. The early morning commuters haven't started their engines yet. It is the deep, dark heart of the night. Spencer and Monique were gunned down in the upstairs of their residence. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong in the living room or a confrontation at the front door. The killer had penetrated the inner sanctuary of the home. They walked up those stairs, into the private living quarters, while the couple was likely at their most vulnerable. The technical breakdown of the scene revealed the violence. Spencer had been shot multiple times. Monique sustained at least one gunshot wound to the chest. The caliber of choice? 9mm. Detectives recovered 3 spent shell casings from the floor. But here is where the investigation hit a wall. No weapon was recovered. No gun was found hidden in a vent or tucked under a mattress. And there were absolutely no signs of forced entry. In the world of forensic profiling, the lack of forced entry is a massive red flag. It tells you one of 3 things. 1. The door was unlocked, which seems unlikely for a family with young children in a transitional neighborhood. 2. The killer had a key. Or 3. The couple knew their killer and opened the door themselves. The silence of the house that morning was punctuated by the survival of the children, a 4-year-old girl and a 1-year-old boy. They were in the house for hours after their parents were taken. They were physically unharmed, but the mental weight of those hours, the crying, the yelling for parents who wouldn't wake up, is a detail that haunts every detective on this case. Take a second to hit that notification bell. Cases like this move fast, and I want to make sure you are the first to know when a break in the investigation occurs. Why was this not a murder-suicide? The lack of a firearm at the scene ruled that out almost immediately. This was an execution. A double homicide carried out with a level of cold precision that suggests the person behind the trigger knew exactly what they were doing. On January 5, 2026, the investigation took a dramatic turn. The Columbus Division of Police released a video that they hoped would be the key to the entire case. The footage came from a Nest camera near the Tepe residence. It captures a figure walking in the alleyway behind the home during that critical window between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. The person is wearing a dark, hooded coat and light-colored pants. Their head is bowed. Their hands are tucked into their pockets. They are walking with a purpose, but they aren't running. They aren't panicking. They are just moving through the shadows of Weinland Park like they belong there. Police labeled this person as a person of interest. They weren't calling them a suspect yet, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. This figure was in the exact place at the exact time that 2 lives were being snuffed out just feet away. The release of the video triggered a wave of community action. A GoFundMe was established by Spencer's sister, Audrey Mackey, to provide for the long-term care of the 2 orphaned children. Within days, the fund exploded, raising over $146,000. It was a testament to the lives Spencer and Monique had lived, the patients he had helped, the students she had inspired, and the friends they had made in Cincinnati, Mason, and Columbus. Do you think this person in the alley was a professional hitman, or someone from the couple's past? The lack of forced entry is the detail that really gets me. Let's talk about your theories in the comments. Detectives Weiner and Miller, the leads on the case, began a digital dragnet. They asked every resident in the area bounded by Summit Street to North Grant Avenue and East 7th to East 11th Avenue to check their own cameras. They were looking for a trail, a license plate, a face, a direction. So, why them? That is the question that continues to echo through the halls of the Columbus Division of Police. Spencer Tepe was a man with no known enemies. His professional life at Athens Dental Depot was dedicated to healing. He was an Ohio State graduate, a Bengals fan, and a mentor. Monique was a dedicated mother and a former educator. There were no public records of domestic turmoil, no messy lawsuits that would lead to a double execution. Was this a case of professional victimology? We have seen cases in the 90s where successful professionals were targeted because of their perceived wealth or because they represented a shift in a neighborhood that someone else didn't want. But the killer didn't take the wealth. The valuables remained. The $700,000 home remained. Only their lives were gone. The legacy of Spencer and Monique Tepe is now in the hands of the relatives who are raising their children. It is in the memories of the patients who no longer have their favorite dentist. It is in the sunflowers and roses that people have laid on the porch of that silent house on North 4th Street. The gilded cage of the Tepes was a dream they built together, a dream of urban renewal and a life rooted in love. But that cage was breached by a shadow that vanished into the Ohio night. As of early 2026, the person in the alleyway remains unidentified. The 9mm handgun remains missing, and the silence of North 4th Street continues to ask for justice. If you have any information about what happened in Weinland Park on December 30th, contact Central Ohio Crime Stoppers at 614-461-TIPS. Your information could be the piece that finally closes this case. Thank you for being part of Crime Cortex. Your support helps us keep these stories alive. If you want to see another investigation into the dark corners of the Buckeye State, click the video on your screen right now. Stay vigilant.